I will pull you open and climb inside of you and visit a party pretending to be you with you as a skin jacket.
That sounds a lot dirtier than I
shit.
think you intended it to.
I will fucking use your rib cage as a rack for my plates in the dishwasher because the one I have is kind of falling apart. You useless mongoloid. I will.
You know,
I will make a necklace out of your finger bones, you piece of shit.
You know, when we went and saw Ant-Man this afternoon, they gave us these little tiny mini comic books and like a magnifying glass to look at them. And these are the crappiest magnifying glasses I've ever seen.
These suck. You can't do shit with these. I couldn't read it. And I got frustrated, so I just gave my tiny comic book to Josh.
Did they offer him one?
No.
They must have thought he's too cool for comic books.
Yeah, look at this guy. He's clearly not a virgin.
He said...
Don't give him a comic book. The guy at
the front desk said, we give them to people who seems like they read comic books.
Yeah, so, that's why they gave him to you.
No, to you.
Well, okay,
you were literally
to be fair,
wearing a Captain America shirt.
While also covered in Spider-Man and Deadpool and Punisher tattoos.
Yes. So if anybody's the virgin, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of which, we saw Ant-Man and the Wasp-Man.
Yeah, Ant-Man and Wasp-Man. Ant-Man and Waspinator. Man, this movie would have been so much better if it was Waspinator instead.
So, I remember back in 2015 when the first Ant-Man came out, it was the same year as a big bloated Avengers movie came out that was very disappointing and I didn't really like. And 3 years later, a big overblown Avengers movie that was really disappointing and I didn't really like came out, and then an Ant-Man movie came out that I really liked.
Yeah. It's the more things change, the more they stay the... I thought Infinity War was pretty good, though. I liked it way more than Age of Ultron.
You're wrong. Your opinion is wrong.
Yes. I liked Infinity War.
Man, this is a crappy comic book. It's just the first movie.
I hate those fucking tie-in books that they keep doing. Like, here's the prelude for Spider-Man Homecoming, and it's just like just the events that they showed already in Civil War, but in comic book form. Like they're never actually anything like new content-wise that tells you more about the story. Or it's like, here's Thor Ragnarok prelude comic, and it just is the first Hulk movie as a comic. Because I guess that's still canon, even though they kind of want to pretend it isn't, but still they have to pretend it is.
That's what you would want to remind people of, because everybody's seen the Thor movies, but nobody's seen Hulk.
Huck. By Mark Miller.
And Matthew Miller.
No, you. How dare you?
How dare I what?
Sir, I'll have you know that I don't know. I'm really tired right now. I'm not good at making jokes. Can we roll that back? Can we do another take of that?
No.
No. Can we try that?
No.
Okay. So which type of mermaid? Which type of mermaid would you have sex with? The normal mermaid or the one that has the fish head but the girl legs? Because so far as we know, the one with the traditional mermaid body does not have any kind of reproductive organs. So far as we know. And if it does, it might be something gross like a cloaca.
Look.
And while the other one isn't too attractive from the waist up, it at least has a functional vagina.
Of amphibious genitalia.
Oh, like it just has a slot that opens up?
Yep.
Would you want to put it in there? Because that sounds kind of gross.
Depends on the top half.
Yeah, maybe if you weren't really looking at what you were putting it in, you could just like really enjoy the top half and be like, all right, whatever.
Or you could just, not have sex with the bottom half.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, okay. If the goal is just I love this mermaid, I would like to copulate with them, and not so much that you want to like reproduce in any way. That's fair. I'll buy that for $1. You know, like I bet mermaids give good blowjobs. You know, just because they're always going glub 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 anyway. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I started to phase a little bit into my Matthew McConaughey phase there a little bit.
Alright.
Alright. Hey, this mermaid's looking for a good time.
There is an extended cut of Baywatch on Amazon Prime.
What a fucking segue that was! Okay.
So what do you think about Ant-Man?
Ant-Man was really good, although I think, you know...
What did you like about it first?
Okay, what I liked about it is that it's a very fun movie, in that it doesn't feel the need to be too dark or like mean-spirited.
And it doesn't need to have the highest stakes in the world. And
no, yeah, it was a very down-to-earth, normal, small-scale story,
it doesn't need to be about
ironically.
Somebody who's trying to destroy the world. The villain has a very clear objective, and it makes sense.
And it's kind of a really, I'm not gonna say a smart objective, but it's like
it makes sense.
It's one that you can agree with if you were in their position and you had the same means that they do to get this goal. Now, I think we're gonna go ahead and say that we're gonna do spoilers.
Also,
so
it was
just
really
skip
funny
ahead, like
in a genuinely good way.
Yeah.
People complain about the MCU being funny when it's Spider-Man: Homecoming funny or Doctor Strange funny, where it feels
forced, and it's like, will you stop? Can you like have like a serious moment? This one
the
feels
humor comes
natural.
from the fact that these people are just very funny, and they're very relaxed and down to earth, and it doesn't feel like they're trying to make you laugh. It's just that the situations that they're in are humorous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So what I'm thinking is that like, it feels like the jokes were intended to be there, and they were not something that was added after the fact, like in a lot of Marvel movies. Like I feel like Doctor Strange. I remember that they brought in a comedy writer to do rewrites. They brought on the guy from Rick and Morty and Community to do rewrites because it was apparently like a little bit too on the dark side.
If you look at there's a deleted scene on YouTube where Caecilius, Dr. Mads Mikkelsen's character, basically kills a priest and says there is no God, there is no life after this one. And that's kind of a really dark but really interesting scene. And I think that if they'd gone with that, it could have been a lot cooler.
No, but like we gotta have them have the funny comedy scenes where Doctor Strange trips on his magic carpet cape from Aladdin, and you gotta have scenes where the fucking the monks at the goddamn place are listening to was it Beyonce? Yeah, I fucking hate a lot of those scenes in that movie because they're so forced in and they feel so weird and awkward.
It's
because they just don't match. Yeah, because there's like, I'm gonna get into this violent, bloody car accident, and shows this like really sad, dark scene of him trying to
really great makeup of the
the hands, yeah, like, but. It was like this really like dark, depressing stuff with him losing his ability to use his hands for surgery and like him falling on hard times and becoming an asshole to people he cares about. And then the monk listens to Beyonce, and then the bad guy calls him a funny name, and he's like, "That's not my name," and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. What's your actual name?" And then his cape makes him trip and fall down the stairs, and he goes boom.
Versus like
this
movie where
it's like
tonally consistent.
If everything felt like it fit.
Mm-hmm. Like there's a scene where the villains are, monologuing and explaining their backstory and being super serious, and then Scott Lang's phone rings with a really wacky ringtone.
Yeah, it's like a duck
Yeah.
quacking or something.
And it's like, oh no, it's an emergency. Come on, I gotta talk to my daughter. Where are my shoes?
Where are my soccer shoes? I have a game tomorrow. I don't know. I'll look for them in a sec. Like that felt.
It was
really.
It felt honest to the universe that they were living in, and the characters.
It felt honest to the especially to the characters, because it didn't feel like the villain like wouldn't have done that, right? And also, again, because we're spoiling stuff, so skip ahead like 30 minutes. I find it interesting how by the end of this, like, really no one got like horrifically murdered. Like, sure, a couple people got their asses kicked, but it was still like just kind of like chilled out and not very violent. Like, I wouldn't call this a family movie, but it's just like barely a step above that.
Fun. I would say it was that way.
It was fun, and the villain wasn't like a crazed psychopath who
wants to
I find it interesting who wants to kill everyone. I find it interesting how Ghost
the villain
for sure wants the villain Ghost, she wants to do wrong things but just doesn't get around to it or gets stopped by her much more morally sound partner. And how by the end of it, you could almost argue it's like, well, now that she got what she wanted, she doesn't really have to even be a bad guy anymore. And then she's just like just their friend, I guess. And it's like, that's kind of interesting because you could use that character for more stuff later. And also, I don't know, it's kind of refreshing to have a Marvel movie where the villain either doesn't end up in prison or get horrifically murdered, but instead just ends up being their buddy at the end, because I don't think that's happened before.
I think, I would say, because these movies are about Scott Lang just sort of learning to overcome his mistakes and trying to do good despite not always having the best judgment. And I think that
he's not a bad guy, but he just makes some really stupid decisions, and it's charming and you like him. He's not like Tony Stark bad decisions where it's like, you're such a dick, stop it. It's like he just didn't think things through, and he means apologetic. Well. Oh yeah, he realizes he made mistakes and wants to fix them.
In his life.
Tony Stark, whose sole strategy is, if people call me out for doing something wrong, I'll double down, do something worse, and be sarcastic about it, and people will pretend that I'm charming. Yeah, I still don't like Tony Stark. I mean, I used to love him, but he just gets worse every movie.
Around Iron Man 1. Iron Man 2, he was okay, and Iron Man 3, I felt he got some genuine character growth.
And then Avengers Age of Ultron is the downward spiral where he just starts becoming an asshole.
He just becomes a terrible person, and it's because he's never... The needs of the story overpower the needs of the character development. And that, I think...
Because we need him to be doing things that would be counterintuitive to what it would be in his best interest as a character.
And this is, if you'll allow me to move off topic, is one of my main criticisms with these larger group movies is that character growth is put aside for the sake of plot progression with the example of Tony Stark in Civil War and Thor,
and in Age of Ultron.
And Thor.
Because it's like he throws away at the end of his trilogy. He throws away the whole thing. Like he just
blows
quits
away
being Iron Man.
all the Iron Man suits, except that he can't save everyone. And then he says, "Okay, now
I need to save everyone," and builds the biggest Iron Man suit
I can't save everyone, so I need to build a giant robot to save everyone.
It's just like, did you learn nothing, you asshole? And then Thor learns that he doesn't need his powers in Thor Ragnarok, right?
He doesn't need his hammer because his power is within him. It's like he's coming into his own as a ruler, as a person, and in the end of the movie, he is king and he's riding off on his ship. In the beginning of Infinity War,
I don't need my hammer.
His people
and then everyone he cares about dies right
so
away, and he needs a bigger hammer.
So he reacts from this desperate impact of all of his people being killed to his decision is, I need to build a bigger hammer.
I just need to be like it's almost like a step backwards. Like all of what he learned in Ragnarok, he doesn't learn anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that
I think
some of the stuff Scott Lang learned in Ant-Man 2 is going to be negated in Avengers 4.
This is why,
because that's how these crossovers keep seeming to go.
Yeah. This is why I don't like these big crossover movies. Is that all these stories, all these all these characters, they exist in the same world. No, they exist in the same universe, but not in the same world. They're very different tonally, thematically, in terms of characters. Like, Captain America Civil War is a spy flick. And then we have this movie, which is a heist. You mean
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, sorry. Winter Soldier is a heist flick. And then Winter Soldier is a spy movie, and then Ant-Man is a heist movie.
Slow down!
And then there's the spy movie, and then there's the space movies with, Guardians of the Galaxy. And
there's kind of a comedy space opera.
There's all these different tones and worlds these characters inhabit, in which characters act very differently.
But then they get put together in a single movie, and then have to be like some other version of themselves to work with the crossover.
You lose what makes those stories so special.
Yeah, it's almost like part of the problem of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that, I mean, for a while there, it felt like the movies were starting to get really samey, but now that they're starting to get like noticeably different again,
they're having, Taika
they're having this
making his weirdo things,
and then Black Panther is like really kind of heavily political and kind of
it's a political thriller spy movie.
Is kind of dark.
It's more in tone with Winter Soldier.
Yeah, but then you get Ant-Man, which is just like full on, like almost a family movie.
It's a
not quite as.
It's
not quite as like funny as like Ragnarok in the same way.
They're not.
Like they're
not.
They're very different, but they're both funny.
They're both funny in their own ways, and it would be weird to see those two styles of comedy going together, because the way I think of the jokes in Ant-Man, they're written. And they're in the script, versus Taika Waititi's style of comedy, which is very improvisational. They had a script, but like over 80% of the dialogue in that movie is improv.
Which kind of shows, because you get bits like when Thor is like talking about how he's talking about how Loki stabbed him when they were 8 years old by pretending to be a snake, and then he picked up the snake, and then like, is this really funny? Totally sounds like it was ad-libbed line.
There's the bit where there's the bit where he's talking to Valkyrie, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the female, yeah, but it's cool, like trying to be feminist, but also getting caught around your own words and getting tongue-tied," and that was what I love that so much.
Oh yeah, I mean, okay. I'm not a big fan of that style of comedy. I feel like it's better to plan things out, but it doesn't mean it never works.
If you have a bunch of funny people, but you also have a script to keep things going, because
when your script is, okay, they talk for 15 minutes, there's nothing for them to work. You get Ghostbusters, and that we're talking about the new Ghostbusters, not the old Ghostbusters. But if you have like a very strong script, and you have a director who knows what he's doing and can rein in the cast, you get something like Thor Ragnarok.
I would like to read the Thor Ragnarok script as written, because I have a feeling that it's very different in terms of tone. I think that in terms of tone, it would be a lot closer to what the other Thor movies were, but then
they allowed room for something
Taika
fun.
Waititi took that and injected comedy into it. Versus, Ant-Man, which is designed to be a comedy from the beginning.
Yes.
Paul Rudd even has a script credit.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense.
He also
didn't he also have one in the first one? I think
he and Chris McKay stepped in at the last minute to rewrite the script after Edgar Wright left.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like something else that I really would have wished was improved on in this one. And don't get me wrong, I actually really like this film.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably one of the nicer MCU movies in a while. I liked it a lot more than like the last.
I had a lot of
3
fun
or 4
with
of them.
Thor, and I had a lot of fun with this. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was pretty good. Like, the number 2 of most series tends to be pretty good.
Yeah, they seem to... Well, except for Iron Man.
Except for Iron Man and Thor.
Yeah. So, what I'm noticing here is that the fight scenes are a little underwhelming, and I feel like there's kind of a lack of creativity considering what the powers of the characters are.
Okay,
I feel like
this is what Marvel got rid of when they got rid of Edgar Wright, because Edgar Wright is a very visual filmmaker and he's very creative in terms of shots, and
he can direct action like crazy. Like he proved that several times. Baby Driver and Hot Fuzz. Like, Hot Fuzz is not meant to be an action movie.
Xavier still hasn't seen Baby Driver.
I still haven't, but I
So
seen the
add
intro.
him on Twitter to tell him to see it, because it's amazing.
Alright, well, at David on Twitter and tell him to stop being such a bastard. Anyway.
So my point is that they in the first movie, there are hints of the leftovers of what Edgar Wright was going to go for with his visual style. Like the bit where he's jumping on the gun.
Yeah, he's jumping on the gun, or like you see like the kind of really funny, creative fight scenes where he's like running around on like a model of the building, and it's like he's like the perfect size for it, and it's being ripped apart by bullets, but it looks like a full size building exploding. Or like
or the
they fight inside of the
train at the end.
They fight inside of a suitcase that's falling, and they're like floating around in zero gravity, basically.
When you get rid of that guy and you get Peyton Reed as director, who is, for all intents and purposes, a comedy director who's now stepped into the action.
You get stuff like, here's a car chase, but one of the cars can grow and shrink, and that's kind of pretty much it.
I liked it.
It was fun, but like you could have done probably a lot more fun and weird and creative stuff with that. Like, I don't know. I don't ask me to like ad lib something off the top of my head, but if I had a car chase,
requires a lot of planning.
If I had a sequence and you told me to like come up with something neat for a car chase sequence where the car can grow and shrink from like a Hot Wheels to a normal size, I could probably come up with more stuff than what they did.
Bring the car chase indoors with the tiny car, and then like maybe have people like trying to chase it on foot or something, or maybe like have like a dog chasing it or something.
Something like that, or okay, because what I'm noticing is that there's not a lot of like really like emphasized cool badass moments. It's just like the fight scene is just like, okay, here's a fight scene. Like there's not like a really awesome moment where you're like, whoa, that was awesome, I'm gonna remember that 3 days from now.
Versus,
it's just
say, like Thor Ragnarok, where you have the bit where he's first starting to use the lightning on the bridge.
Oh yeah, he's just punching everyone on the bridge.
That's just awesome.
Or Hulk jumps at the giant like fire monster at the end that's voiced by Clancy Brown, and like there's a lot of like there's a couple of moments like that, but I feel like they used all of them in this movie for the trailer, so everything else is just like, all right, well, it's just she's punching him, and then she shoots him, and then she's punching him. It's just like, come on, do something creative.
I was hoping for, well, once again, spoilers, that something creative would happen, because they heavily hint when they retrieve Janet Van Dyne from the quantum realm in the end of the movie, that that she's been changed. I was hoping for something creative there in terms of her defeating Ghost.
No, she just touched her and fixed her.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was hoping for something that... And I get what your point is, but I still think that I like it for what it is that...
I think it's just because I put a lot of value on fight scenes in movies.
This is no longer Edgar Wright's Ant-Man, pardon me. This is Peyton Reed's Ant-Man.
And that's fine, and it's
a lot of fun. It's very enjoyable. and I'd say I would watch it again. In fact, there are 2 Marvel movies that I have DVDs of. One of them is Captain America 2, and the other is Ant-Man. And I think I would buy this one.
I think I would too. I think
It'd be a nice
movie that you'd like. It would be really nice to watch this and the first one back to back.
Imagine like it'd be a fun movie to like put on with your friends and have a nice afternoon.
Yeah. Well, as no one wants to watch Age of Ultron at a party because everyone's just going like, why did they do that? What about this? What's going on there?
I had a
there's
friend.
So many questions.
I had a friend. There was a birthday party for a friend of mine, who likes PureFlix movies now. A few years ago.
Okay.
But at that party, we watched Man of Steel, and boy, can I say that was not a fun time.
That's not a movie you watch at a party.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That sounds terrible.
It was.
I mean, I don't hate that movie either. I actually kind of like that one.
It's got a very bleak, joyless tone, and when you're in a party, you want to have fun.
Yeah. So
this is it's a good party movie.
Man of Steel by yourself if you kind of want to feel shitty.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a good time with like friend, like Ant-Man's a movie you watch with your girlfriend.
If you have one of those.
If you do.
Or with your gender-neutral significant other.
Yeah.
Non-binary significant other.
Yeah, like if you just want to fuck a giant piece of tofu, you could watch it with that.
Or your robot.
You have a
significant other.
Like if your significant other is named The Vision.
Yes.
And is played by a motionless robot Paul Bettany.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I really feel like a lot of action sequences in Marvel movies have been lacking lately because they're not doing enough cool shit with these powers, and it always kind of basically just comes down to
well, the thing is,
okay, hold on. There's two stages of not very interesting fight choreographies. There's just hear me out. They're just punching and kicking. That's kind of lame. You could probably do more with it. That's kind of like what the fight scenes are to me in like a lot of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, or this is just they're just punching and kicking. Or you get something essentially a little bit worse, which is like
Avengers Age
Spider-Man
of Ultron.
Well, Avengers Age of Ultron is like 6... Oh, hang on a second. What?
Dane has to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Because he has a job tomorrow.
Yes.
So you can't be up all night chatter.
Alright, I'll just move to the basement. I'm recording the podcast right now.
That's fine. And it's cat box cleaning night.
Okay.
Do not forget, because you haven't cleaned them in 2 weeks.
Alright, I got it.
And the trash is supposed to go out tonight.
Alright, I'll move downstairs. Okay. Where was I? Okay, so there's 2 levels of it, alright? Make sure to cut that out. Hold on, I'll make sure that it's easy for you to find that spot. Ah! Okay, there you go. Just look for that spot in the audio.
No, you.
But anyway, okay, alright. You got 2 levels of not very interesting fight choreography in Marvel films. You got, it just comes down to punching and kicking, and it's kind of visually boring. Like, these characters are capable of doing a lot more than that, but they're just doing, like, normal, like, mixed martial arts. I'm gonna punch you here, I'm gonna kick this guy here, I'm gonna do maybe, like, a little bit of a flip. That's kind of like what I think a lot of the fight scenes in, like, the first Guardians of the Galaxy were like. The second one got a little bit more creative, like that fight with Gamora and Nebula was pretty cool.
With the giant gun.
And like the crashing the spaceship and everything. But okay, and then this one felt like just alright, here's punching and kicking territory.
Okay.
Like there was a little bit of cool stuff, but still pretty punchy kicky.
So,
and then you get the worst ever, which is Spider-Man Homecoming, where he doesn't even punch or kick, he just kind of webs people to things. Or he just gets knocked down a lot. Like, the fight choreography in Spider-Man Homecoming still pisses me off because it's like as bad as the 90s cartoon where he's just, like, not even fighting.
Okay, I will one-up you on there. Worst action in the MCU to date, Captain America Civil War, everything except for the airport scene.
Okay.
Where it is just constantly, the camera's constantly lurching all over the place, and it's shaking, and you can't see anything, and it's just moving super quick, and you feel like you want to die.
I'll agree with that up to a certain point, because there's that one action sequence where S.H.I.E.L.D. tries to, or not S.H.I.E.L.D., fill in random government agency name, but the feds find Bucky's apartment and try to grab him.
That is an example of it.
I thought that one was a fun fight scene because he was smashing people real good with his robot arm and was running down a flight of stairs while kicking people.
Those scenes just gave me a headache. So those are the worst. Okay. Particularly worst example.
I thought it was fun how, like, Bucky was, like, wrecking house and, like, kicking everyone's ass.
It would have been nice if I'd been able to see it.
I was able to keep up with that one. I think I have a higher tolerance to motion sickness than you do, so that's why that one didn't bother me.
Mm-hmm. Although we could both agree that the worst fight scene in the movie is the first one.
Oh yeah, where it's just like, what, Captain America jumps in through a window, throws his shield, and it bounces and hits like 3 guys. Then he kicks someone, and then that's the fight scene. That's it.
So I will play devil's advocate here because I'm
not saying everything needs to be the Raid or like a Monty Ohm fight scene, but I'm absolutely saying that.
Part of this problem is budgetary reasons, because the first movie cost $142 million, Ant-Man. The second one cost $160 million, which is about $100 million less than they give to the big team-up movies.
Okay, so, like Infinity War had more.
Infinity War had easily twice the budget of this movie.
Yeah.
So
they had to do that so you could have Thanos' face be so well modeled.
Well, and they could afford to do that because Avengers made $2 billion versus this movie, which will be lucky to hit $700 million. So they need to spend less. So, to be fair, there's a reason that's partially a reason for it, and the other reason for it is the direction. That I think that, like, Scott Derrickson, for whatever you say about his Doctor Strange, those fight scenes had a lot of imagination to them.
Yes.
So I think that
they were able to do a lot of creative and cool stuff with the fight scenes.
I will say that I love the way that movie looks. I just wish
I hate Doctor Strange, but I think it has some of the best action scenes in the MCU because they were able to do so many creative things given Doctor Strange's power set.
They were given free reign to just be weird.
Right?
And they had the imagination to back it up versus Peyton Reed, which... I mean, I think he did a great job making this movie, but that's just not his forte.
Okay, what I'm saying is that I think that the fight scenes need to feel appropriate for the character, considering the amount of things that they're capable of doing. When you have a character with a certain kind of power set, like let's say you have a guy with super strength, it's really frustrating when he doesn't jump very high, he doesn't hit anyone particularly hard, he can't really run very fast. That's why Luke Cage is obnoxious. Like, Luke Cage has garbage fight scenes. They always go off about how strong and how fast he is, but he never actually, shows that in a fight sequence. It's like, at best, he'll maybe flip a guy on his ass, and he could probably do that anyway, considering Mike Coulter's just a big guy.
Yep.
Right?
So
you get a fight scene with Spider-Man. Spider-Man has, like, such high-level agility and speed that he should be moving so quickly it's hard to keep up, right? Or doing, like, really cool, over-the-top, complicated gymnast stuff.
So what I'll say...
But instead, it's just like, I'm gonna push you.
Is that Spider-Man... Maybe that's also partially due to directors, because director of Spider-Man, John Watts, he made
an idiot.
Clown.
He made Clown.
And Cop Car.
While as another director made something, like, creative with, like, like a visual style, like Evil Dead. That has, like, things that are memorable about it, that are interesting, and he has, like, a signature as a director, so you can always kind of tell when it's a movie by him. I feel like it's lame when a movie doesn't have like that kind of like mark
No,
on
we're
it.
not saying that every single movie needs to have a visual style. Like, not every movie needs to be Wes Anderson. Although I would,
But maybe a directorial style.
no,
you know,
no. You just need to make a film look good. Like,
I'm not talking just in visuals. I mean just like how you put together the film.
Movies like, say, Rian Johnson making Last Jedi or George Miller making Mad Max. They don't exactly have a style to the way they make movies. They just make good-looking movies.
I guess what I'm talking about is just more in like the way that the film is generally constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Has like a certain like Darkman and Evil Dead and Spider-Man by Sam Raimi. All of those feel kind of similar, and it's not because he's not capable of doing different. Like they're very different genres of films, but there's just certain ways about the editing and the music and the style of the way it's shot and the pacing that all feels kind of like unique to him. While as a lot of MCU movies, I feel like don't have any kind of specific like feel to them in that way. They always feel like each other.
I don't think
like,
that's necessary. I just think that you need to have...
I'm just saying I enjoy movies more when the director has more of... I mean, when he puts more of himself into the film, like James Gunn does it, obviously.
I'll agree with that. In that, I would pay to see a Wes Anderson X-Men movie.
Right? Like, there's just something about that. Or what's another good example? I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe you could argue that all of the MCU films feel like Joss Whedon movies. More or less, like not all of them, but most of the ones with the larger casts.
I would say that from Civil War onwards, they've taken on a bit more of the what's the word, the Captain America 2 feel to them.
Not quite as good, but definitely trying to be that.
Yes.
Especially because that was just such a tight script and like just felt so like
it works with the character. It tonally fits with the character.
Just felt so guided and well directed. Like you just knew what the movie was going for and what it was building up to. And then there's a couple of times in Civil War where you're like, "What the fuck is even going on? Where are we doing right now?" You know.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Avengers: Infinity War, I know that there was a couple scenes that you thought were boring and didn't need to be there. I think there's not as many of them as you say, but I do agree that there is a couple scenes where it's like, why is this in here? Stop it. The Guardians of the Galaxy are really awesome and hilarious, except in Avengers: Infinity War, where it feels like they just dead stop the movie every time they're around, because it wants you to remember that they're so good at quipping and making jokes and having funny banter that the plot just stops so that you can hear them bantering and saying funny things at each other. You know? Like there's like a 90-minute scene where they're just talking about Thor being a pirate and how much they want his dick. Like the movie's running time without that scene would have been 6 minutes. That scene just goes on for fucking ever.
I'll agree.
Oh look, Drax is standing over here in the background eating chips. Isn't that hilarious? Oh, there's a crazed warlord trying to kill everyone. No, let's watch Drax eat chips. That's hilarious. Why is Gamora? You know, like,
that
fuck
would make sense in a Guardians movie, but
all of that would make sense in a Guardians movie. But here it's just like, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop taking screen time away from Spider-Man, you bitches.
I'll be controversial here.
Yeah.
I didn't like him in Infinity War either.
Well, because he was there for like 5 minutes, and basically all he did was make a really obnoxious movie reference.
All that whatchamacallits,
the Russos.
All that Spider-Man does in the Russo brothers films is reference movies like, referencing a movie that came out in the 80s and calling it old. Millennial humor. Oh.
Okay, there's a trade-off. Is that
I hated that.
I think. Okay. I think the Russos understand Peter Parker's character a little bit more and know more things of what they should do with him in terms of like his character direction, and they know how to direct a fight scene with him. Like Spider-Man can fight in a Russo movie and it feels okay. It feels pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like his contributions to that stuff in Civil War and Infinity War felt like good. They felt serviceable for the character, right? The trade-off is that his quips are a little obnoxious at times, and sometimes delve into the territory of trying, of just like a weird like movie reference, and that's
Klein's Spider-Man.
Kind of, yeah. Where it's just like you could do something more clever than that. But then you get John Watts directed MCU Spider-Man, where he doesn't know how to fight, he doesn't know how to quip, he doesn't know how to be self-reliant, he doesn't know how to do anything, he's just fucking obnoxious the whole movie, and I hate it. The more I think about Spider-Man Homecoming, the more I realize that I don't like it, and it's not because it's inaccurate to the comics. I understand the necessity for making a really different take on Spider-Man. It's just that this take of the character is not interesting to me in the slightest, and they keep fucking it up every time they have an opportunity to make it cool. Is that fair?
Well, I think that you have a better claim to that than I do, because I just don't care about Spider-Man.
I know. I care about Spider-Man more than I think most people on the planet, considering the amount of time I've put into fucking everything regarding that.
You don't care about him as much as fangirls care about Tom Holland.
Oh god, I'm following this Stan account on Twitter. I feel like I've talked about her before. Someone like tweeted something that she said at me, and I was like, alright, I guess maybe I could like follow this person because she seems kind of funny. But then I started seeing the Twitter stan culture of how they just constantly jerk off to celebrities that are playing these characters. They don't like anything at all about comic books or the characters. They just want so badly to fuck these actors as their characters. And Benedict
Cumberbatch.
Like, they don't like Doctor Strange. They've never read a Doctor Strange comic in their life. They like Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange, and they want to see Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange have sex with Iron Man.
They'd like to see his Benedict.
They want to come in his batch. Right? But, like, in terms of, like, the actual, like, content and the, you know, the material, they don't give a shit. They just want to see these characters have sex. Or the actors playing them have sex. Or they want to speculate on the sex lives of these actors. Like the Tom Daya shippers are like, Zendaya and Tom are clearly a couple because they've been seen wearing the same clothes as each other multiple times. Also, one time we saw a picture of Tom leaving Zendaya's house with a bag of luggage. It's heavily implied that they're having sex.
They had good chemistry in Spider-Man.
Here. Is it going to affect the quality of the film?
Listen.
If they're fucking in real life?
Listen.
Actually, it will, because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were great.
Controversial statement here. My favorite character in Spider-Man Homecoming was Zendaya.
Do you remember her character's name? Don't say MJ. I mean...
Michelle.
Okay, alright. That's fair. If you didn't remember the name, I was going to revoke your statement. She was only in it for like 3 minutes of the screen time, but is apparently the most important character ever to some of these people.
I liked her a lot.
What is wrong with you? What is wrong?
She was...
Why are people like this?
I like how aloof and like quippy she was. She was sort of the quippy that I like.
It felt like her jokes were actually kind of like written by someone who knew how to write jokes. Mm-hmm. While as Spider-Man's jokes were written by someone who's never looked at another human being before.
Maybe Spider-Man's jokes were written by John Watts, and then Zendaya's jokes were written by someone else.
Well, the movie has 8 credited writers, so probably.
So for the sequel, the two.
And then it cuts to all the scenes with Vulture, and it's like, oh, hey, the movie's interesting.
So
it's like the movie gets way less interesting whenever Spider-Man is around, and that's a huge problem.
For the sequel, they have two credited writers who are also the main credited writers on Ant-Man.
The main credited writers for Ant-Man 1...
2.
Oh, Ant-Man 2 are the writers for Spider-Man...
I think they also might have done some work on Ant-Man 1.
Yeah,
it's like
I think so too. So we should expect Spider-Man Far From Home to be less of a clusterfuck and feel a little bit more like Ant-Man.
Unless John Watts decides he needs to have a hand on the script.
Unless John Watts decides that he needs to make everything bad again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that what's important to me is using a very classic take on the character and really getting back to the roots of Peter Parker. So I'm going to only look at the Ultimate Comics and then proceeds to make nothing like the Ultimate Comics at all because that version is like gritty and has like an attitude.
So what I'll say is that what did you think of Michelle/MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming?
She's not Mary Jane, but Mary Jane's not allowed to exist anymore, so whatever, I'll take it, fine.
I think she was a fun character.
I think she was fine. Like, she was barely in it. I don't really have much of an opinion, but I didn't cringe and roll my eyes whenever she was around.
Plus, I think...
I feel like a lot of people might have.
Plus, there are also other reasons that
if they weren't furiously masturbating.
There were other reasons that I like the character, is that I think I have a type, and that's it.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Is really snooty liberal girls?
Yes, actually.
Who are sarcastic?
Yes.
I see that girl you follow on Twitter. I know what you're into. I got you. But anyway, sure, like, I know Mary Jane Watson is an abandoned concept that will remain in limbo forever.
what's her name? Kristen Bell? Or...
No.
Stewart?
Kirsten Dunst.
Oh. Kirsten Dunst ruined Mary Jane.
Okay, Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane
ruined the character.
For the most part sucked because she wasn't like comic Mary Jane at all.
Like, after that, no movie is gonna do redhead Mary Jane ever again.
Which sucks, because we got like one try at that. We might try Gwen a second time because people kind of liked Gwen. But like, I don't know. Can you have her die on the bridge twice? Like, it's just kind of, at this point, like, it wouldn't have the same impact because you fucked it up. You almost had it, but then you fucked up the landing on the first one, right? The first Gwen Stacy death. If you try it again the second time, it's just going to feel obligatory. Like, it's like, well, we got to have this scene in there now. Cause...
I'll say that you can't have MJ... No, you can't have Gwen in another movie. Because now that they've pulled the death, you have to... You know that they're going to do that, so... They're going to have to kill her off.
Because the general audience probably didn't know that she was going to die, so that came as a shock to a lot of people.
But now that that cat's out of the bag, you're gonna have to do that again, and people are gonna.
It's like if you had Uncle Ben come back and did another, or it's like you're just waiting for the scene where it happens, and you're just like counting the minutes to that death scene.
So you can't do that again.
I would say you can, given enough time. In 20 years, we can do it again. Not now, though. It's too early. Comic Mary Jane is actually a really interesting and compelling character, and I really like her.
Well, except for Spider-Gwen in the Spider-Verse movie.
Oh, well, yeah, Gwen's there, but that's specifically a universe where Gwen lived and Peter died because it's flipped.
But he's alive in the movie.
No, David, there's more than one Peter Parker in that movie. And all of them are wearing sweatpants. I'm really excited for Into the Spider-Verse. It actually looks really good.
You weirdo.
It's probably going to not have very good fight scenes.
Well,
It's not gonna be violent enough. I want to do a thread on Twitter of all my favorite moments from Spider-Man, and it's just all the violent, dark shit.
okay, so
Everyone's gonna be like, "Well, you're just cherry-picking moments," but it's gonna be like several hundred of them.
can I say something?
Yeah?
I appreciate Spider-Verse even more than I did before, for one reason.
Why?
I went back and I watched when I watched what's the name? The Adam West animated movies. And the animation in those Adam West animated comic book movies are so lazy and so generic
Oh, yeah.
that it's just so boring to look at, and the colors are muted, and it just looks boring.
A lot of
Versus Spider-Verse.
DC animated films don't have any kind of visual style anymore. They just look really flat.
It's
yeah.
the cranking out the sausage animation pipeline model. It's TD animation.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. It used to be like in Bruce Timm's animation style, where it's like
It looks cool.
it looks cool. It has like a really interesting like art style for how the characters are drawn. That's really memorable. But now it's just like
And part of the
It's just kind of realistic-ish characters.
And that's part of the problem with making the Adam West animated movies, is that the Adam West Batman lives in a very distinct world. Of
a very colorful,
flashy,
wacky, and
colors,
like weird world.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel right putting that in a universe with muted colors and realistic movements. So when you're slapping up the Slam Black, the title cards that announce
the silly like
it
audio
feel
things.
Right within the visual,
Because it's juxtaposed against this really bleak-looking background. Like it. Yeah, I would agree with that. But Spider-Verse, however, is just like, let's do the most creative, weird thing we can think of.
That's what I'm saying, is that they wanted, literally what Phil Lord and Chris Miller wanted to do. This is their stated intent. They wanted to make it look like a comic book.
Well, I think that the, like... you know what's interesting about that is I would say the way everything moves and looks and like the colors, absolutely. Like there are some times where the color of like a background is like the sky in one scene is just like a hard yellow, and it's not because of any reason. It's just like, well, it's daytime and you can make it look kind of plain and normal. But sometimes comics will just like use a single flat color for the background that'll make what the action is pop a little bit more, and they do stuff like that, or like speed lines.
Is really, really cool about the movie is that it's allowed to look unique.
Yeah, it's allowed to have a style that's memorable. Like, you're always going to be able to look at a frame from that movie and know what movie it's from. I could show you probably a random, like, still image from any random DC animated film, and you'd have a hard time deciphering, because it's just like, here's a kind of just plain-looking city with plain-looking people in it, and a mostly realistic, like, art style for how the figures are drawn. And it's just like, you know, even if it was like a 10-second clip of them doing like an action sequence, they still generally move and look the same. Like, I don't know. I think DC animated films have more going on in terms of quality of storytelling and like voice acting.
I've thought about making a video about these Adam West animated Batman films because of They make me feel depressed, honestly.
Because it's just like watching a ghost.
It doesn't. It's going through the motions of the Adam West Batman universe, but is it embracing none of
them?
the heart.
It's like, here's obligatory this thing you remember from the show.
It embraces all the outward aspects of of that series, but the soul of it is gone. And part of that is the cheap animation. Part of that is the fact that it tries to be self-aware. Like,
the old show wasn't self-aware.
I've talked about the Adam West Batman show is the exact opposite of being self-aware.
It was being fucking weird like that. Like,
it takes itself very
on accident.
Part of the joke in the Adam West Batman movies is the fact that the characters in this world take their silly, childish shenanigans seriously. And that's really endearing.
Maybe the actors don't, but the characters do.
The actors take it seriously, even.
Okay, well,
they're very,
yeah. I mean, okay, like, you get, like, a bit like Batman answers the phone, but then he's like, hold on, let me put Bruce Wayne on. And then he just, like, answers the phone again as Bruce Wayne. They don't play that for laughs. That was meant to be serious.
They play that straight.
It comes off as a hilarious scene. That wasn't the intent.
I feel that it's tongue-in-cheek, but they're not talking down to you. They're not insulting you. They know what they're doing is ridiculous, but they're just having fun with it. And they're having fun with just doing what they're doing. And when you're trying to be self-aware, like, for example, there's a running joke in the animated movies where Aunt Harriet, who is stays around in Wayne Manor for some unexplained reason, constantly makes jokes to Alfred about how she thinks that, you know, Bruce is having some of, you know, Dick around. And that's not the universe that they built. They have the sign that says, you know, instantaneous automatic clothes changer in the bat poles to avoid that. This is
so what you're saying is that it tries to pay homage to it but doesn't get it.
It tries to pay homage to it, but it also tries to be too clever. So it doesn't really get it because it tries to have its cake and eat it too, is that it wants to be a throwback, but it also wants to be a self-aware sort of parody.
Yeah.
There's no there's no winking at the audience in Batman. And that's part of what makes it so charming. That's part of what makes it so much fun.
Is that there's a sincerity to it.
It's really silly schlock that if the actor if it felt like the creative team was talking down to us, then it would be insulting and unwatchable. But they're having fun. Like, there's a note in the Batman movie that says, like, oh, this is for all the people who want to have some escapism. It's like that sort of sincerity that you get with those movies. I'm gonna see if I can find it. It's just so charming the way that they do that.
It's fun, but not because it's trying to be.
It is trying to be fun. I would say that it is trying to be fun, but it's not.
Well, okay, it's not trying to be garbage fun.
So here it is, the dedication from Batman, from the producers. We wish to express our gratitude to the enemies of crime and crusaders against crime throughout the world for their inspirational example. To them, and to lovers of adventure, lovers of pure escapism, lovers of unadulterated entertainment, lovers of the ridiculous and the bizarre, to fun lovers everywhere. To them, this picture is respectfully dedicated. If we have overlooked any sizable group of lovers, we apologize, the producers. So they're having fun, but they're not talking down to you about it. They're just like, hey, we're having really fun. We're having a fun time here, and we want to have some fun time with you. And I really like that, and these new films don't get that. They just take the surface level silly elements of it and think that's all that there is to it. And that really depresses me.
Hey, David. What if I told you this is how it feels to be a Spider-Man fan? Is when they don't understand why things are interesting, they just take one element of it and then overblow it like crazy. And then you're just like, what about all these other really interesting parts of it? that give context to the thing that you're making super
You are
expressive.
aware that I have watched the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies.
Okay,
so
so
I get it.
if you're a fan of Star Trek, of like old Star Trek,
I'm a fan, not so much of old Star Trek, but of Next Generation.
I meant that too, because I consider
And
that
to
part
me-
of, like, current Star Trek is like the new show and the new movie.
To me, Star Trek is not about Kirk and Spock, and it's not about Khan, and it's not about those surface level elements. It's about the hope for a better future, and the hope that we can come together to work for that future, and that we may not necessarily get there, but that we are working to get there. It's about the struggle to create a better world.
But then you get
then
the
you
the
get-
J.J. Abrams movies, and they're about punching and explosions.
Yeah, and that's kind of depressing.
It looks like a Star Trek movie. It quacks like a Star Trek movie.
But it's not a Star Trek movie.
But it's not a fucking Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it's like to be a Spider-Man fan.
And this is also...
regarding anything with that character in it
This
lately.
is also, if we'll extend our thesis here, this is also why a lot of horror sequels are never good.
Is because they don't know why the original was good. They're just like, well, we have the character and we have
Freddy,
the violence.
we have Jason, we have Pinhead, so why aren't you loving this?
Yeah, that Freddy versus Jason is like a perfect example, because like it's just it just doesn't understand what elements people found interesting about either of those films, and it's like, well, we have both of the characters, isn't that good enough?
And
No.
to bring this full circle before we end this podcast week off, this is why I don't like Infinity War. It plucks a bunch of characters from established stories and places them in another story without understanding or bothering to address why we like those characters. And it just left me with a feeling of just ennui, and I just did not caring anymore, because the spirit of why I got so invested in those stories felt gone to me.
Okay, so what you're saying is that it doesn't understand the characters, but it can do like the fanboy moments of just like,
Exactly.
it can do like the, hey, you get to see Thor hold his lightning hammer and he looks cool and we wanted him to have a new hammer.
And we
But
gotta
then in
see
terms
Captain
of, like-
America and Bucky touch each other's shoulders. And we
But in
gotta
terms
see...
of like,
Okay, the one of the moments that I did like was the interaction between the lady who's the guard of Black Panther and Black Panther, where they're talking about the Starbucks, because that felt like a moment from Black Panther.
yeah,
That worked, but with these, especially with Thor and with Guardians of the Galaxy, and with the more outrageous, silly elements of the MCU, it just didn't fit. And I'm honestly glad. I'm really, really glad that Ant-Man was not in Avengers Infinity War.
well, because one, there would have been like hardly any room, and I mean, I know that they have plans for him to be in the fourth one instead, but there wouldn't have been room, and then it would have just been yet another style of comedy,
Another giant
because
man
all of these
scene. Or like,
there would be, yeah. We'd have to have him be Giant Man, but like we wouldn't have any room for like scenes with like Cassie or something,
Yep.
or like
Or
because
Michael
there's like
Pena.
there's a lot of family elements about the Ant-Man movies where it feels like these characters just genuinely love each other and put up with each other's bullshit.
I would say that,
Like,
yeah, that's a really great element of that. And that's what makes the movies so charming.
but when you have Ant-Man in a vacuum just by himself in Civil War, you get that element missing, and it's like one of the most important.
And
ones.
one of the fun parts of Ant-Man 2 was them calling him out on his bullshit.
Yeah.
And how
It's-
that didn't make sense within their universe, and they just made that like, oh yeah, he just made a mistake there.
That's fair.
And that's almost
it
a
works.
criticism of the other movies.
It's almost like they have to talk about how every time, Every time they do a solo movie again, they have to excuse for why one of these characters acted really out of character during the crossover. Or did something that they, like, just shouldn't have. Like, maybe it's not out of character, but it's, like, a dumb decision, and it's like, why would you do that?
So
why would you build Ultron, you fucking asshole?
So, I think,
Whoops.
Xavier has to end off this time. So, I will finish this with a concluding statement relating to the theme of this episode, which is fanboys not getting things about the stuff that they love, is that I will talk about this very soon.
At length.
I've
read the script.
Regarding the sacred texts.
Oh, the sacred texts! The sacred texts! Ah!
We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Mwah.